So at this stage, we have a little bit of time. What I'd like to do is we have a guest from Portland Hotel Society, actually, Ross Hayward, who is involved with this program that we just heard about. And I didn't even know that this program was running in Vancouver prior to today. So otherwise we certainly would have had both of these speakers up talking about the wonderful progress that we're making. It's certainly very heartening to hear that we're starting to look at the issue of chronic alcoholism through a different lens. Did you want to come up and talk a little bit about the program?
I will try to be brief because I'm not scheduled. So small correction, I'm Russ Maynard, not Hayward. I just want to touch on a couple of things so that people know that there are examples already happening in Vancouver, and we've just touched on that. The Portland Hotel has a long, deep relationship with Vancouver Coastal Health, and we have all kinds of projects that are, well, to use a technical term, they're off the Richter scale successful. And so one of those includes a housing model. And there's just been so much valuable stuff said today, and I'm basically building on everything we've heard today, and I really want to build on David Dennis's comments. Like, it's imperative that the people that we're serving have a big voice in what we're doing, and that things be designed and managed by the folks that need these services. And so that's a big part of what VCH and PHS do in their projects. So we kind of invert the typical model. The typical model is one where you have clinical services and you try to bring in incrementally things like softer paints and wall pictures on the wall, and make things a little more home-like. What VCH and Portland are doing right now is starting with a housing model, and then we bring clinical services. And like we've heard from our guests from the States and from Seton House, and it's completely logical, there are a lot of clinical needs in the population that we're talking about. So we want to have that clinical presence and that clinical supports in the projects. But we don't want a clinical project, because then again, are people really comfortable? How much would any of us in this audience like to spend any kind of a protracted amount of time in a hospital? None of us would. We want to be at home. We want to have a place where we can put roots down and that kind of thing. And so that is the model that we start designing backwards from. Cost effectiveness has already been touched on. It's incredibly cost effective. We talked about baseline data. We have a proxy for that in the projects that we're doing, and that proxy is hospital visits. We could also be looking at visits to jail. Those are good proxies for how our budget's doing. If we can keep people out of the hospital and keep people out of jail, it's a pretty strong indicator that from a budget perspective, things are doing very, very well. The project that I'm talking about is very small. Right now, I've just got 3 men living with us, but we're talking about extreme alcoholism. We do both the doctor-prescribed methodology, so someone gets 1.5 ounces once an hour for up to 12 hours a day. The Seton House point of flight risk, is that going to keep someone around? That's a really, really big thing to look at, and by and large, it won't. But it does facilitate and support people. And then again, like Seton House mentioned, you build trust. That person says, hey, can you help me manage some of my income? I mean, a big objective is to move explicitly from non-beverage alcohol, which is so hard on you, to beverage alcohol. That's a really big step to make in someone's health and health outcomes and keeping them out of the hospital. I mean, consider that when you're drinking those kinds of non-beverage alcohol products, the probability that you're going to fall and strike your head and break your nose and get into trouble and all that kind of stuff. If you can move someone away from that direction, you've already had significant outcomes and significant successes. What else can I talk on? I mean, the other thing is when you're working with a housing model and you've got staff there, I've got a clinician and I've got non-clinical supports, because I don't need everyone to be a clinician. It's going to get too expensive, and it's unneeded. I don't need that. I need some staff there to do all kinds of supports, feeding, mental health supports, getting people to appointments, all that kind of thing. But as I talked about earlier, I also need that clinical presence around medications, adjudications, that kind of thing. And it works really, really well. In fact, I'd go so far to say we also, VCH and us, PHS, have another project that works around infections that intravenous drug users are so susceptible to. And it's an incredibly successful project, an incredibly cost-effective project. 98% success rates compared to, at best, 40% at the hospital at half the cost, that kind of. We can achieve those same kind of things around housing people with chronic alcohol addictions. Palliative care. Again, Seton House touched on that. You are going to come up against significant clinical needs, and you are also going to come up with significantly reduced life expectancies. And so can we keep people in community in their homes and give them a lot of dignity and comfort when they're dying? And categorically, we can. We can do it really effectively and really successfully and offer people a high, high level of dignity. And we do that. In a nutshell, I wanted to be quick. That's it. I just wanted to let people know that it is happening. It's very successful. And the community presence is a big part of success. A big part of success. Insight is possibly, the supervised injection site, excuse my hyperbole, but it's hard not to go there. It's probably the most successful public health project in North America. The throughput at that project and the engagement, the opportunity, Seton House talked about this, the opportunity with that huge number of people coming through that project to engage and to let them know about housing and detox and recovery programs and clinical programs and all that kind of stuff cannot be understated. And the number of people that we refer in a year to housing, and I mean there's over 400 people a year specifically just from that project going to detox. And you know, compare that to the stats prior to that project opening. It's night and day. There's no gray area. It's black and white. And we can achieve that kind of thing around these issues as well. And we can do a lot, and we can do it with partnerships with the Health Authority. We're really lucky in Vancouver. I do a lot of talking on these subjects, and it's important when groups this big come to Insight, or I'm at the university and that kind of thing talking to people. I don't want to leave people from different jurisdictions with the impression that this is the way it's done in British Columbia. This is the way it's done in Vancouver. As we all know, you can go to the capital of British Columbia and it's very hard to get clean resources around drug injection. So kudos to Vancouver Coastal Health, to Vancouver Police Department. The partnerships and that community presence are what I really want to emphasize today and build on that. And Don's words that when he said that we need to keep the heat on the feet, that's not just a quick quip. He means that literally. I think I can say that for him. He means that literally, and that's what we need to do. Thanks, everybody.